Hello, welcome to Sunday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. Now today I'm going to do a puzzle that's been recommended to us by John. John's a friend of mine and we've done a couple of puzzles he's recommended in the past and they've always been quite good. So I'm going to take him on trust and solve this one for you. It's a classic Sudoku. He says it's rated just about diabolical, so shouldn't be too easy. But he says it's a very elegant puzzle, so yeah, we should have fun with it. If you want to have a go yourselves, just click on the URL link under the video and that'll take you to our web page where you should see exactly what I'm seeing. I'm just in a quick appeal as well. I don't know if any of you are particularly brilliant at YouTubing or how to game the YouTube algorithm, but if you know any ways for us to try and increase the number of views we get, we would certainly be appreciative of any advice. You can email us at crackingthecryptic@gmail.com or tweet at us at crypticcracking, and I can put a 1 in the grid there. So 1, 1, 1 here, 1 up here. So look at 2s. So we get a 2 in one of those 2 squares. 3 in one of those 2 squares. These 3s are nice because they affect this block quite well. They force a 3 down into the bottom row there. Gives us a 3 in one of those 2 squares. 4s in those positions, 4s in those positions. I think all the 5s are in the central shoots, so I don't think we're going to get too much joy with 5s. Let's have a look at 6s. 6 in one of those 2 squares. Not many 7s in the grid. 8's got to be in one of those 2 squares up there, look. One of these 2 squares. 9 in one of those 2 squares. 9 in one of those squares. What am I missing here? I suppose one thing we can do is once we get a line like this, we should be looking up and down to see if there are any digits that are not in these 6 squares. Or sorry, in these 6 squares that aren't in this box. So you can see the 6 here is cool because that's going to give us a 6 in one of those 3 squares. Therefore there's a 6 in one of those squares and we've got a 6 over there. So it doesn't really do much for us. We've now got 6 numbers in this column, so we need 2, 5 and 7 to finish this column. Now that square can only be a 2 because there's a 5 and 7 in the row. Put the 2 in there, pencil mark the 5 and the 7 at the top and the bottom. Quick reminder if you're new to the channel that when I pencil mark in the centre of a square like this, I'm saying that that square can only be a 5 or a 7. On the other hand, if I pencil mark in the corner of a square, that's looking at the 3 by 3 block and it's saying that that number, that 3, can only go in 2 positions within this block. So you can see those squares are marked with little pencil marks at the corners. Right, but having said all that, what do we do next in this puzzle? Let's have a look. We've got 5 numbers in this row, so we need 4, 5, 7 and 9 to complete the row. So that's going to be a 4 or a 7. That's got to be a 5 or a 9. So that's not much use. Let's have a look at this one. So here we need 3, 4, 6 and 8 to complete the row. Now that is more useful. Look, we've got 3, 4 and 8 up there. So this square must be a 6. And you can see the moment I place this 6, I'm going to have some joy because I can get the 6 there for a start. But I also, in placing this 6, I took the position of this 2. So that means that I get to go 2, 3, pencil mark the 2's up here. These squares now must be 4, 5 and 9. There's 4 points at that one. So let's just take a look at this. Yes, 9s are useful now. These 9s all interact. Force a 9 into this square, which means there's a 9 in one of these two positions. And that's nice. Now this is a feature of the pencil marking we recommend. So now I've locked 9s into the same two rows in these boxes here. So rows 2 and rows 3 are now, we've now finished the 9s effectively for row 2 and rows 3, because I know there's one 9 in one of these two squares, one 9 in one of these two squares, so that's two 9s. Now there's only going to be two 9s in rows 2 and rows 3, so there can't be any 9s in those squares. So the 9 up here must be in one of those positions, matching with the 9s in the columns. So columns 1 and columns 3 we've now finished the 9s in as well. So if we come down to this 3x3 block, there can't possibly be 9s in either of those squares. So this must be a 9. So we get a 4-5 pair here. Actually, that's going to allow us to put this 4 in, because we've done that before. Now this square must be a 5 or a 7 to complete the row, and you can see up there, there's a 5, look. So that's 7, that's 5, therefore that's 7 at the top there. This 7 here means this is a 7, this is an 8 therefore. Suddenly it's going quite well. This square should be an 8 as well, just to complete the row. These two squares are 3 and 4. 4. Now the only challenge really is to use all of these new numbers we've got. You can see the 6s. We're going to get 6 into that square. This 7 sees that square, which can now only be a 4. That resolves the 3 and the 4 down here. That resolves the 4 here. Maybe we're on the home straight. This must be an 8 now. I'd be surprised, because this certainly hasn't felt diabolical to this point, so there could well be a sting in the tail. Right, what are we missing now? 8, 1, 6. So I can pencil mark 6s into these two squares. 9's locked here, 9's locked here. We've done the 9s, I think, as far as we can. 5s. Let's check this row, because we've got 6 digits in it. We need 5, 7 and 9 to finish it. So that's got to be a 5 or a 7. That's got to be a 7 or a 9. So what I do when in this sort of situation, you can see that the 5s, for example, are limited to exactly those two positions. So if I can find another row of the grid where the 5s are also limited to exactly these two columns, that will be interesting. But the problem is that there's just not enough 5s down here to sort that out. Let's have a look at 7s instead. No, again, 7s are fairly free, so we should check 9s. No, 9s are useless. Okay, but that's just something you should look out for. When you have numbers spanning 3x3 boxes in the way that these do, it's very useful to try and pinpoint the two particular columns, or rows if it was the other way around, and see if you can spot any patterns. So where should we go now? We'll go to the top row. We've got 1, 2, 5 and 9 to place, so that's a 5 or a 9. That can be anything, 1, 5 or 9. So that can only be 1 or 2. And that can be 2 or 5. So again here, 5s can go in 3 positions, so that's not that interesting. Let's look at 2s. 2s can only go in 2 positions, so we're looking for another row where the 2s are locked into those two squares. Now there is one. There. Okay, this is good. Good. So let's have a look at that now. So have a look for rows where the 2s are limited to exactly these two columns. And if you look at the 5th row, we've got lovely pencil marked 2s there. So the 2s in row 5 can only go in exactly these two positions. So I'm going to colour those in. Now what does this mean? What's the implication of finding this pattern on the 2s? Well, let's think about it. In the finished solution, we'll either see a 2 here. If there is a 2 in this position in the finished solution, and bear in mind it's either here or here. If it's here, there must be a 2 there. That's absolutely forced. If, on the other hand, there is no 2 here in the finished solution, there will have to be a 2 there and a 2 there. Now, the thing to realise about this X pattern, which gives the X-wing its name, is that in those situations there was always 1, 2 in one of those 2 squares, and there was 1, 2 in one of these 2 squares. So when I look this pattern here, there cannot be any 2's in those yellow squares. It's impossible. So what we need to do is to check these squares now and see whether eliminating a 2 from them matters. So if we look at this column, we've got 1, 2, 7 and 8, so this can't be a 2, so 1, 7 or 8, so this square becomes a 1 or a 7. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. That's a nightmare. I'll just delete all those. I'm going to put 1, 7 in there. I think I've lost a load of pencil marks by doing that, never mind. Now this should be 1, 7 and 8 as well, so that's a 7 or an 8. Okay, well that's not as good as I was hoping. Let me just stare at this for a second. No. Alright, let's have a look over here then. So in this column, given that we can't have a 2 in the yellow squares, we need 3, 5, 6 and 8. So that square, look, sees a 5, 6 and an 8. This square can only be a 3 because of the X-wing. Now that might be good. So let's check these 2 as well. 5, 6 and 8 then in these, that's no use at all. So these are completely free. So maybe the 3 is important. Right, well we can pencil 3's in there. Does that do anything for us? Well, if it does, I'm not seeing it immediately. Let me just stare at this for a moment longer. 2, 7, 8. 2, 8, 1, 7. 3. Ah, okay, sorry. Yes, these 3's, look, they give us a 3 in one of these squares. Now that is important actually, because again we get our pattern emerging. That was so annoying. I wasn't even looking at that 3. I was looking at the 2's and trying to work out whether there was a pattern on there, and I missed the thing that was, well, the bleeding obvious, as Basil Fawlty might have said. But these 3's interact with each other. So again, we finished the 3's in effect in row 4 and row 6. So there must be a 3 in one of those 2 squares. And look, there's a 3 down here. So that is nice. So we get a 3. We get to place a 9. The 9 points at this square up here, which can only be a 5 or a 9, which points there. Now the moment I write this 2 in, not only does it fill this top row, but of course we now know that the x of the X-wing that matters is this x, so this has to be a 2, so that's an 8, this is a 1, this is a 7, this is a 9, yeah, okay, this is done now. I feel very confident that we've found the secret. This must be a 2 into this square, 5 and 9 here, so that must be this way round. This square here must be a 7. This 5 sees the 4, 5 at the bottom. So let's make sure I do that the right way round. Right, so what do we need along here? We need 1, 4 and 6. 4 and a 6 there, so that's a 1. Those 2 squares are 4 and 6. The 1 sees this square where we have a pencil mark. That forces that to be a 1. These 2 squares are 2 and 5. These 2 squares, there's a 7 there, so that must be an 8. Look, these 2 squares are 3 and 7. Oops, not 3 and 6, or 7 and 6. 6. So that must be a 6 there, so that fixes the 4, fixes the 6. 6. That must be a 6. This square therefore ought to be a 5. That resolves the 5 and the 2. That resolves the 2 and the 3. That resolves the 3 and the 7. That resolves the 7 and the 8. Check. That is how to solve the puzzle. So Yes, very nice indeed. Thank you, John, as usual. And yeah, good practice. Quite a lot going on there. Quite good, quite well, a puzzle where I think good technique stood you in good stead. And looking for these situations where the same digit only appears twice in rows and columns is definitely a way to improve your solving. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.